So today we're talking about 5 ways to engage audience participation. It's a quick conversation. We're here only for a half an hour. And get your fingers ready because I want you to answer this question in the chat box. If your week so far, we're at Thursday. So if your week so far were a meal, are we like bad fast food eating? Is that the kind of week you've had? Are you luxury 5-course dining? If your week so far were a meal, what kind of meal? What kind of food? What's the week been like for you? I'm going to say mine while you're thinking of yours. I'm straight up Applebee's. I'm like Americana, chain restaurant, pretty average, but you know what to expect. It's been the kind of week where it's like comfortable, nothing fancy going on over here. Pretty much I know what to expect. We've got some food truck tacos. Alice, that's about my favorite thing I can possibly imagine. Christina's having the best kind of week ever, 5-course dining. Casey's got a healthy mix of salads and comfort foods. That's a nice variety week. African vegan. Ooh, I wonder what kind of week that is. A very fast food week. Caesar salad with capers. That's very specific. I love it. Hi, Caitlin. Hi, Penn State. I love that we have Penn State back in the house. Hefty salads and a little bibimbap. Okay. I'm definitely hungry. Tom is having a leftovers kind of week. So good. I say this every time I ask these questions. Those of you that are here with me every week are like, we're so tired of you saying this, Erika. But it never ceases to amaze me. Gruel. Oh, Lynn, you just took me back. You totally took me back to childhood. That's like the whatever is in the fridge, right? Whatever. It's just the leftover everything all ground up. I'm amazed at the variety of weeks that we've had. We've had salads to gruel. We've had taco trucks to 5-course dining. It never ceases to amaze me, the variety of how we show up to any given room. And when we're thinking about engaging the audience, it's really important to remember that too, that some of us are coming from a 5-course dining kind of best week ever. And some of us are struggling with some really bad fast food or whatever is the worst kind of food for you. I don't know. So I am grateful that you're here, no matter how you've shown up today. And I just looked over at the attendee. I sent one more invitation to those that have joined us to come over to the panelist side. Last week, we had a companion conversation. Thank you again for those of you that were with me last week with my bad internet at the hotel. We talked about 5 ways to warm up the crowd. And we really focused on being mindful of different ways to ease our participants into you, the content, and each other, really warming them up to the idea of being together in a space. So we looked at it from a macro level. I wanted to remind us of those before we get into today, which was this idea of that we give them time when we're warming up the crowd, we give them time to talk to themselves. That's thinking, answering questions in their own mind. Then we give them time where you're just talking to them. The chit chat, the kind of chit chat that I'm doing with you now is an important part of the warm up because we're easing into the space and the time together. Then they talk back to you. You're talking back to me now with your phenomenal food answers. They talk to each other. They're in small groups. They're in partner shares. And then they're ready for interactive games and activities. So that I put that back up here today because it really is an important companion. The two conversations go hand in hand. When we're talking about how to engage the crowd, we're really thinking and being mindful of also how we're warming them up with these essential questions, which is the importance of psychological safety, the reminder that all of us, when we start a thing, when we go enter a new space, are wondering, even if it's in our subconscious minds, are wondering, am I safe here? And do I want to stay here? So we're assessing the threat of any new room. And so as a facilitator, I'm wondering, how am I best mitigating that assessment and making you feel comfortable, ensuring that you are safe here, and then hopefully making sure that you want to stick around as well. Christina, welcome back. It's always good when you come back. So I'm sorry you missed the last couple, but I'm glad you're back. So today, our companion to 5 ways to warm up the crowd is 5 ways to engage audience participation. So I'm staying kind of macro because each of you engage a different kind of audience, different location, different age, different reason. We could be talking about an executive board meeting, or we could be talking about kindergarten camp and everything in between. So really trying to stay macro, but I'll give you some specific examples to help get your brains going. So be thinking about your specific audience as we look at these macro ways. So the macro 5 that we're going to talk about today is get them thinking, get them talking, get them laughing, get them moving, and get them creating. And I apologize because my neighbor has decided spring has sprung in this moment and is mowing the lawn. So I'm sorry if you can hear that right now. That's the good news and the bad news. Okay, so get them thinking and engaging their brains. A lot of the specific examples here also mirror that first tip of warming up the crowd, which is get them talking to themselves. Whatever we can do as our participants enter a space to really engage their brains and get them thinking is a great way to pre-engage to whatever content you're about to launch. So I think of this as pre-engagement. And there's a lot of ways that we can do that, whether you have a big fancy screen or a flip chart or nothing at all and just little post-it notes on the table, but examples of ways that we engage their brains and get them thinking from the start, which is a gentle easing in, sharing a quote that might be relevant for the day, sharing a statistic that lends validation or evidence to the topic at hand. If it's a meeting, if it's a board meeting, whatever it might be, having a reflective question for pondering, sort of the question of the day on the board or on the table. Other ways that we can engage their brains is to have things for them to do that may or may not have anything to do with why you brought them together. If you're in a physical live space, I hate an empty table. Put some stuff on the table, whether it's a fidget. There's so many fidgety toys these days, things that they can pop, things that they can fiddle with. And many of us are fidgeters. And that's the way our brains work. Our bodies need to be moving for our brains to be activated. That is not a problem. That does not mean there's something wrong with us. For some of us, that brain-body connection will just never be broken. So as a facilitator, if there's something I can do to engage our fidgeters, let me do that by putting those things on the table. Puzzles, you can print for free. Coloring pages, Sudoku puzzles, crossword puzzles, word searches, put out some pens and papers and things for them to just fiddle with. You're activating and engaging their brain before you even start. This is really important, the easing in. William, I think last week you talked about the importance when we were talking about the warm-up. You used the example of the warm-up act to a comedian or a musician, and I've been thinking a lot about that example. There's a reason we have a warm-up act. There's a reason we have an opening act. The audience isn't ready yet for the main event when they first walk in. So when we think about warming up the crowd and we think about engaging the crowd, we want to think about easing in. We're not ready for the main event when we first start. So number 1, get them thinking is the first tip, which also equals engaging their brains. Number 2 is get them talking. So some of us are ready to talk fairly quickly when we're in a new room. Some of us will never be ready to talk. So you won't get everybody talking necessarily, and that's okay. But the ways to get them talking include things like table topics on the table, just leaving questions out on the table, inviting a turn and talk, a partner share, the small groups or discussions. And this is where when we get into virtual landscape versus live physical landscape, when you're virtual, your tools are limited, but there's still ways to talk to each other. The chat box is essential. When you're not in a formal webinar format like this, when you're in a more informal meeting room, you can send people into breakouts. That's important as well too. So really thinking about small group opportunities to talk to each other. If you're naturally in a small group, that kind of talking happens more organically. If you're someone that's here today thinking about what do I do for a large group setting, I'm about to do a keynote address, or I'm about to engage a whole huge room of hundreds or thousands of participants, this is when you really want to think about how do you get them into small discussions at tables. You can do the get them talking as they're even walking in the room Something that we like to use at leadership are things that we call graffiti wall or gallery art walk. The graffiti wall is if you just have a large piece of paper on the wall or Post-it notes, they can be chatting with each other. This connects to the first one. If you ask them a reflective question or a prompt or a quote, they can be writing their answers on the graffiti wall and talking to each other about their response to that. So think about ways to get them talking to you and to each other as a way to engage the crowd. And remember, and I'll say this a few times before the end, even if they're not talking, doesn't mean they're not thinking about talking, which is essentially the same thing. So I can be engaged and having a conversation with myself in my head that might not look like engagement to you as the facilitator. Don't freak out about me. Don't freak out about the one person at the table that's not talking when you've asked the whole group to talk. They very well might be talking in their mind and participating fully with you. So engagement looks different than sometimes we think it does. Okay, so get them thinking, engage their brain, get them talking, engage their socializing with each other, get them laughing. It's probably one of the best ways that we engage an audience, that we engage as humans. You think about this, the power of laughter when you're with any group, when you're in a business meeting or at a family dinner or having a spontaneous interaction with a stranger at a grocery store. What happens when laughter emerges is such a powerful engagement human tool. So as a facilitator, if I can evoke moments of laughter, I'm evoking engagement automatically because laughter does that to us. So there's so many different ways to get them laughing. That's not just like stand-up comedy. Is this thing on? Let me tell the joke. But there's personal stories usually do the trick. So linking back to that first one of getting them talking, if you're getting them to share personal stories at their tables or in their groups, or if you're in a small group with each other, first concert that you went to, most memorable date, first car, first experiences, the food conversation takes us back. Sometimes too, if you're utilizing a PowerPoint or any kind of presentation, think about funny clips from TV shows, memes. There's so many TikToks that you can pull from that are funny. So sprinkling in some funny memes, TikToks, videos, getting people laughing engages them to you, engages them to the content, and usually engages them to each other. So get them laughing is number 3. Get them moving. When we think about engagement, this is probably the one that we're thinking about. Like, how do I get them up and moving? And that is important. When your time and space allows you to get your participants moving, it's a really valuable facilitator tool to do. There's a lot of them that we use at leadership that are fairly standard, but that really do the trick. And probably the most common and easy way, if you want to engage your audience, is to get them up and moving in a bit of a walkabout based on your topic. And no matter what your topic is, I can't emphasize this enough. You could be talking about quantum physics, or you could be talking about leadership skill building, and you can do these kinds of activities. So in a what we call people to people or a walkabout, you are inviting participants to get up and walking around the room while music is playing. You're getting them out of their seats and into the room, and then they're finding a partner to talk about whatever you want them to talk about. A quote, a statistic, a question, a problem they're grappling with at work, whatever your topic is for the day, you insert a question for them to talk about with their partner in this moment. And then they mingle as many times as you want. Music is on, they're mingling. Music is off, they find a partner and they're sharing. This kind of active talking and walking is a really engaging audience tool when you're live. People scavenger hunt is a similar way to get them up and out of their seats. I'm sure you've used versions of this before. Find someone. You're searching, you're doing a scavenger hunt, but it's a scavenger hunt for different people in the room. This is really great when you have a very big room full of people who don't know each other. So find someone who has the same birthday as you. Find someone with the same pet as you. Find someone who loves the same sports team as you. So they're on the prowl. They're on the hunt for different people, and that's a great way for them to engage, but also to get to know each other. If you're virtual, you can still do scavenger hunts of the traditional variety, and that can engage if you're with a group for a long period of time virtually, and their brains are getting tired and you want to wake up their brains, you can send them on the hunt for something in your house that you love, something in your house that represents how you feel about your work right now. Whatever it might be, you can send them on a virtual scavenger hunt too. Line up by age, line up by height, line up by birthday, silently having the group do that kind of team building activity. Same thing with a spectrogram, which is move to this side of the room if you think pepperoni is the best pizza topping. Move to this side of the room if you think the Colts are the best football team. Those kinds of things. Or games, rock, paper, scissors, tournament style. Getting them moving is a really great way to engage your audience. It's forced family fun. And it's really most effective after you've done some of the gentler engagement techniques, like just having them turn and talk at their table while they're sipping on their coffee, or color with a coloring book without talking to anyone. The more you've sprinkled in those kinds of things, the more they're ready for these kinds of things. I'll pause there for any comments, questions, thoughts about these first ones. Get them thinking, talking, laughing, and moving. Any comments, questions, or thoughts on this first batch? Isn't it funny and ironic that in a workshop about engaging the audience, all I'm doing is talking to you? Bad modeling, Erika. Okay. The best of all is all three. So if you're thinking as a facilitator, what's my topic today? Is there a version where I can get them talking, laughing, and moving at the same time? That's the best of all. And there's fun and playful ways that you can do that. If you've been in a live room with me ever, you've seen these are my three favorite things to do. Hot potato, especially if they're at small tables, if you can just bring a bunch of balls, you can ask them whatever you've been talking about, troubleshooting ways to improve your effective communication at work. Maybe you've spent some time talking about that, and then you want them to think about what are the specific ways they're going to improve their effective communication at work. For example, hot potato. When the music is playing, they're throwing that potato, the ball, around their table. And then when the music stops, whoever has the ball has to answer, what's one way I'm going to improve my communication? Or what's one strategy I have for A, B, or C? So when the music stops, whoever's got the ball has to talk. This invokes shrieking hysteria every time I've done it, no matter who the audience is. So if you really want to engage the energy and get people to avoid a ball at all costs, play hot potato. It's super duper fun. Vaughn, yes, I will send the PowerPoint. Tatiana will send it to you after this presentation. So you'll get all the slides. Snowball fight, similar. If we want to talk about, let's say, leadership qualities, I get a piece of paper and I write down my leadership qualities that I struggle with the most. These are the ones that I really want to work on, but I feel like I struggle with the most. I write them on the piece of paper, crumple that piece of paper up, and then we engage in a snowball fight and we throw those papers at each other. And then we pick up a random person's leadership quality that they're struggling with, and we talk about it for ourselves. So snowball fight is a fun way to get people talking, laughing, and moving. Sticker validation. Grab a sheet of stickers, stars, smiley faces, and have your group. This is a really good one if they know each other well. Have your group walk around the room at the end of a session and validate a positive quality about each person in the room and put a sticker on them as they validate them. Those of you that are from Penn State that were at APCA know that I'm a huge fan of the stickers. I love the stickers. There's so many ways to use stickers, but sticker validation is a fun way. So simple ways that you can get your participants talking, laughing, and moving. It's impossible not to be engaged. In some ways it works too well because then it's hard to rein them back in if you have more content to cover, but you are gonna have an engaged audience if you get them doing all of these three things together. The last one on the formal tips was get them creating. This does Maggie, it's a great question. How long should be allotted for the warm-up? In some ways, I feel like it's a trick question, right? Because I feel as a facilitator, I should be thinking about warming up and engaging the crowd from start to finish. If I think about the content that I need to deliver, whether it's a formal presentation, a meeting, a goals report, or an interactive training, I really should be thinking, what are the things that I'm building in throughout the entire start to finish? that are going to engage and warm up the crowd. If you're specifically thinking, what's something I can do at the start to just ease them in before I have to get to the nuts and bolts of what I'm presenting, that really depends on the amount of time you have in total. I have a half an hour with you in total. I'm still going to do an opening question. We're maybe only going to spend 2 minutes on it. So it really depends on the time you have allotted. But I think in general, as a facilitator, think about what am I doing to warm up or engage the crowd throughout the entire time, if that makes sense. I know the thing with dry content is like, how do you put a rubber duck to it? If you need to talk about budgetary numbers, I don't know what you would consider to be dry content. What I consider to be dry, you might be like, that's the most engaging content ever. If you've got dry content, have a ball toss where they have to talk about those dang budget numbers. Use Play-Doh to describe this quarter's earnings. So think about playful ways that you can incorporate that. And that's actually to this slide, get them creating. The sort of epic way to engage audience participation is if the groups are creating something together. If you have a big, large room that small groups creating things, if you have a small group, they're creating one thing, that can be as simple as a brainstorming list that they're creating together. It doesn't have to be a fancy sculpture made out of Play-Doh, but it can be. But even a brainstorming list, if they're creating it together, there is something that happens to the group in a bonding way that really is engaging. So if I have to problem solve and create and build and produce a product with a group, I'm engaged. I'm engaged. I just can't not be. I'm not necessarily loving every minute of it. If you make me create a group skit and I hate skits, I'm not loving every minute of it necessarily, but I'm engaging with my group. I'm finding a way for me to participate and I'm engaged. I'm engaged. So think about ways that you can get them creating. But again, if I've never met you and you walk in my room and the very first thing I ask you to do is come join me on the stage and join me in a 3-minute improvisational skit, you're going to leave and I'll never see you again. So really think about scaffolding safely, knowing that you won't necessarily get full audience participation ever, but you're guaranteed to get more audience participation if you're easing in, if you're gently moving towards the 3-minute improvisational sketch. And invitation, volunteers, invitation over obligation. Who would like to join me on the stage versus, hey, Lynn, you, I've decided, are going to come and join me on the stage for the skit. So a bonus tip is the element of surprise. And honestly, maybe with the dry content, Maggie, if you can do some playful surprise things, that might help shake up the sauce a little bit. So the bonus tip here, are there things you can do to surprise them? Something I've been doing recently, so it's not really surprising anymore, but I love to do it, is whatever our topic is, let's say we're talking about gratitude, pull out your phones and text someone in your life right now and tell them something you're grateful for about them. That's not something that you necessarily expect to do in the middle of a meeting or a training, is text someone. Usually we're told to put our phones away and don't look at them. Tape something under their chairs. Everyone look under your chairs. One of you has this quarter's final numbers. One of you has an extra sheet of stickers, whatever it is. That kind of element of, wait, what? She taped something under our chairs, wakes up the brain, which engages. When we're talking for a long time, like I'm doing today, people's brains start to just shut down and go to sleep. So if I can insert and incorporate little surprise moments, that reawakens the brain and re-engages the audience. Those of you that were in APCA, my Penn State friends might know something that I love to do, and as an element of surprise, is have people write on me. So I had a pair of overalls on at the APCA conference with Sharpies in all my pockets and encourage people to write on me their answer to the prompt, happiness is. So that's outrageous and not necessarily appropriate in all situations, but that idea of, you want me to write on you, really? That's engaging and surprising. So think about ways that you can get answers to the questions you have in ways that are maybe outside of the box thinking. All right, we have 2 minutes left. Don't forget the power of praise and prizes. I know some of our budgets are less than $0, but candy, rubber ducks, little stickers, there's things that cost next to nothing that you can buy in bulk on Amazon. And when somebody answers a question, tossing out those kind of prizes, when prizes are at play, Even if it's a stinking gold chocolate coin, everyone's energy level and attention suddenly goes way up. And so the power of using prizes, standing ovations, applause, praising your audience members, really just loving your audience by name with praise, with prizes, does wonders for the entire group's level of engagement and participation. So here's what we talked about. Get them thinking, get them talking, get them laughing, get them moving, and get them creating. And again, I said it before, but remember, some audience members are never going to participate out loud. It's never going to look outwardly to you like they're engaged or participating. It doesn't mean they're not. Some people just participate inwardly, they're reflective, and that's how they need to absorb the content. Let them do it in their way. Just make sure there's always an invitation. There's always a seat at the table for them so that they feel welcome to join in outwardly anytime they want, but don't feel obligated to do so. All right, final reflections as we have arrived at 1 o'clock. Any final reflections, thoughts that you want to share with the group? Lynn, go for it.
Oh, this was just another wonderful, uplifting, upbeat session with so much to think about and so much hands-on stuff to apply. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Lynn. I appreciate that. Thank you, everyone. Enjoy the rest of what's left of your week.